Today, I've got a super interesting video for some people. If you're like me and you're a bit of a camera nerd, maybe you're obsessed with tech specs and pixel peeping, as they say, then today's video is going to be right up your alley because we're checking out some super slow motion footage that I shot with the latest firmware update for the Panasonic S1H. I just want to point out that I did not test every single frame rate option and I did not test every single picture profile because if I did, this would be an 8-hour long video and I didn't think anybody out there would want to watch an 8-hour long video and I didn't want to make an 8-hour long video. And so I really stuck to testing 144 frames per second and 180 frames per second. The reason why I chose those two frame rates is because 144 is the fastest you can go before the image crops in on the sensor. And then if you're going to deal with a cropped image, you might as well push the camera to the highest frame rate possible and get the slowest motion possible. The following test shots were all shot with the natural picture profile and the vlog picture profile. Anyways, that's enough talking. Let's check out some footage. So I think the biggest takeaway from that sample footage is that the vlog really doesn't cut it. And I think part of the reason why is that between the higher dynamic range of that picture profile and the higher frames per second combined with the more compressed codec, what's happening is that you're ending up with too many megabytes per second for the codec. So some of that grain structure that's present in vlog becomes more of a blocky kind of noise that no matter how much you try to color grade it or bring the exposure down in post, that grain I think is always going to be there. Now, typically I've had better results with log profiles when I expose to the right. That means overexposing by a stop or two. And it's possible that I could have pushed these shots a little bit more, but I still think that the noise would have been much more present than it was with the natural picture profile. Now, speaking of the natural picture profile, one of the things you'll notice is that partway through my tests, I tweaked the picture profile settings a little bit. I turned the sharpness down -5, and I also brought down the noise reduction. Now, the reason I did that is because when the sharpness was set at 0, or the default setting, what I found was that the things that were in focus had like pixelated stepped edges to it. And secondly, for noise reduction, that's not something that I want the camera doing for me. That's something that I want to do if and when I have to in post. If you've found picture profiles or settings that work really well for you on this camera, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to try it out. And feel free to hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up button if you feel like it. And lastly, I thought I would have some fun with today's video, so stick around if you want to see how to make a breakfast taco. Today we're making a breakfast taco. You're going to want to start by slicing up an onion. I used a medium yellow onion, but to be honest, I think you could use whatever onion you want. This is just what I happen to have on hand. Begin by peeling off that outer layer. You don't have to do it in slow motion. Truth be told, you probably want to spend as little time handling the onion as possible so that you don't tear up too much. Speaking of tears, if you find that you often have trouble cutting up onions without crying, there's 2 easy things you can do to help that. One of them is keeping your onions in the fridge, and the other is to use a sharper knife. I don't quite know the science behind these tricks, but you can Google them if that's something you're into. Next, you're going to want to grab a frying pan and set it to medium heat with a little bit of oil. Once the pan is warm, you can toss in those onions and stir them around for a little bit. I kept a few of them aside for later. After a few minutes, they'll start to caramelize and you can remove them from the heat. I then fried up a few cheese pierogies and set them to the side. If you've never had a cheese pierogi before, they're wonderful. They're kind of like cheesy dumplings. Now in the same pan, we'll crack a couple free-range eggs. I like to do mine over easy or sunny side up, but you could scramble them if that's your thing. While the eggs are cooking, we'll dice up some tomatoes and the remaining onions. I also added some cilantro, which you can leave out if you think it tastes like soap. And then drizzle it all with a bit of olive oil, a splash of apple cider vinegar, and top it with some fresh black pepper. Once your eggs are done, take a minute to heat your tortilla in a pan. You'll thank me later. Now we'll assemble our taco. Start with the eggs, pierogies, the fried onions, and a little bit of sour cream. You can also use plain Greek yogurt if that's something you like. I then topped mine with some leftover coleslaw that I had from the night before. If you don't have coleslaw lying around, I suggest you look up the Martha Stewart coleslaw recipe. That's the one I use. Then finally, we'll add that fresh salsa that we made and a little bit more black pepper. And that's how you make my breakfast taco.